Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Corinth 10 pump action shotgun that you can get from the 10 lab in your clan's dojo. Now, I really like this weapon simply because of the design and the way that it shoots. Like, I think the design, in my opinion, it was maybe kind of inspired by the conference call from the Borderlands 2 series. If you guys don't already know, it was a weapon that you got from killing the final boss in Borderlands 2, and whenever you shot it, it shot multiple pellets, like, basically any shotgun would, and once the pellets, like, met the enemy, so, like, say the bullets went into the enemy's head, the bullets would, like, split into other bullets, and it would come out the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the enemy's head, so it, like, come out of the enemy's head. It was cool. It was insane. It was like a cool concept, and it would be cool to see something like that in Warframe. But the weapon kind of looks the same just because of the barrel. I don't know why. Obviously, there's a lot of differences and stuff, and obviously it has its own sort of Warframe look to it. But for some reason, this weapon just reminds me of it, and I kind of get a little bit of nostalgia whenever I use the weapon as well. I feel like they've kind of took a lot of inspiration from Borderlands weapons recently because they looked at, or it, like, take the Baza for example, it looks like the bitch from the bunker in the Borderlands series. So, I just thought that it looked cool, and yeah, but otherwise, or other than that, let's go ahead and talk about the weapon. So, it's a buckshot shotgun, which means you can hit some pretty long range shots with it. It has five shots in one magazine, and it has an alt fire. So, here's the buckshot. And you can see the pellet spread on the wall here, so it's got a pretty nice spread. Very fast reload. You load every single pellet in, like, individually, but it's super fast. And on top of that, the alt fire is like a little explosion, so it's like an air burst, right? But the thing is with the air burst is, like, if you don't let it, like, travel its full distance, like, say we shoot it at the floor here, nothing's going to happen. The pellet's just going to jump back, and, like, it's just not going to do anything. It's going to deal impact damage. It's just going to be like meh. So you basically just wasted a shot. But you let it travel a certain distance, then it does an explosion, and then the enemies get knocked over because it deals initial blast damage. And then obviously, like, our buckshot in general, this just deals puncture damage at base. So, like, the most predominant damage type for the buckshot is puncture damage, then slash coming in a close second, and then impact being the least predominant element, not element, but damage type whenever it comes to firing the buckshot. But it's a crit weapon, and you can build it with hunter munitions, and you can also run a status build on it. I've went ahead and put 5 Forma on the weapon, so I can put both a crit build on here and also a status build. But this is the build that I use most of the time, and this is because I have access to, obviously, the dual stat elemental mods and hunter munitions here, prime ravage and stuff like that, so I get the biggest benefit off it. But let's go ahead and take a look at the stats with no mods on. So you can see over here on the left hand side, in the buckshot, we have an accuracy of 9.1, crit chance of 30%, crit multiplier of 2.8 times, fall off, I'm assuming this is in meters, so 18 to 36 meters, fire rate of 1.17, magazine size of 5, obviously it's alarming, reload speed of 2.3, status chance of 12%, semi-automatic fire, and then we move on to the damage. So we have 151.2 impact, we have 226.8 puncture, and 162 slash. So you add all of these values together, and that is your total damage for the weapon. Moving on to the air burst, most of the stats are the same apart from the crit chance. So we have a crit chance of 4.0, crit multiplier of 1.6, and then our status chance is moved up to 28%. Still semi-automatic, and then we have our different damage stats. We have 100 impact, but 404 blast. Some pretty weird numbers right there, but it makes sense. So now we move on to our regular build, and we're just going to go ahead and basically run ourselves through how we build this. So if you're a newer player, obviously you're not going to have access to prime mods, right? So what you can do is you can run the regular version of any prime mod that I show in this video, and then you'll get somewhat similar effects. Prime Ravage compared to regular Ravage, there is a big difference. So you see 6% crit damage compared to the 110%. That's a big jump. So you are going to see, like, a noticeable difference there. And also comparing, like, the regular point blank to a prime point blank, there's a big difference there as well. So obviously, if you can get your hands on the prime versions, do it, because there's no downside to it other than the fact that you're going to have to spend, like, upwards of, like, 40,000 endo to get the max rank, which is, an insane cost, but, it's worth it. So let's go ahead and throw Prime Point Blank on, as well as Prime Ravage. So because we've upped our base damage and we've also upped our crit multiplier, we can go ahead and we can up these even further by throwing on our Hell's Chamber, and this basically gives us multi-shots. So this isn't actually going to give us like a higher crit multiplier, but what it's going to do is it's going to give us higher damage values because we're going to be shooting more pellets out. So it makes more sense to have, or it makes a lot of sense to have Hell's Chamber on because it's, basically like 100% chance to shoot extra pellets. On top of that, a 20% chance to shoot like a third round of pellets as well. So it's pretty insane. So that is that. Next up, we're going to want to up our crit chance. So we can see here at base, we have our, where's it at? We have a 30% crit chance. We want to up that. So if we throw on Blunderbuss, it goes up to 57%. Now, you don't necessarily have to run Blunderbuss, but if you want like a more sort of sustained DPS type thing here, like some consistency in your damage numbers, I would recommend throwing this on. This is especially important if we're going to be running our Hunter Munitions build, which, I mean, ideally, in my opinion, you should be going for, because the difference between the Hunter Munitions build and the 90% elemental mods corrosive builds, which I'm going to show you now, it's kind of like night and day. So yeah, so we have all this stuff on. This is our main damage, and this is our crit already thrown on the weapon. Now we just threw on our elemental damage type. So this is where you're going to get your percentage bonuses to particular enemies based off, like, what faction you're going up against. So let's say we're going up against, the Grenier, and we want to take down the Heavy Gunners. We threw on our corrosive damage, and that's a combination between Contagious Spread and Charged Shells, because that's Toxin and that's electricity. So we make sure that they are beside one another in the modding section. So if you guys don't know, modding section actually has an order. So here's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8. So it goes from top left down to bottom right, and in that specific order. You just have to make sure that those two elemental mods are beside one another, or basically like, next to one another. Whenever it comes to this modding section here. So you could throw, let's say, for example, Seeking Force in between them, and you'd still have corrosive damage, but if you threw an elemental mod in between them, it would change it into gas damage, right? So Contagious Spread and Incendiary Coat makes gas, where, Contagious Spread and Charged Shell, if we move Incendiary Coat over here, actually makes corrosive, and then we get corrosive and heat because Incendiary Coat is in this final slot, which moves us on to our next mod that we're going to throw on, which is going to give us a damage increase across the board. It's Blaze. So this gives you 6% extra damage across the board to all your physical damage types, and it gives you fire damage, which makes more sense, which again is more damage on top of that. So no reason not to run it, at least in my opinion, especially with the type of builds that we're going to be running. And then last but not least, you have a spare slot to throw on basically anything you want. So you could throw on Seeking Fury, you could throw on a dual stat elemental mod like Shell Shock to up your corrosive damage here if you really wanted to. Seeking Fury will give you punch through and it'll give you extra reload speed, which is nice, but the reload speed is fast enough, and in my opinion this is more of like a rewards high accuracy players type of thing, so, or type of weapon. So I would opt for just running more damage over Seeking Fury in this case. Or you can do what all the cool kids are doing and run Hunter Munitions. And Hunter Munitions will basically procs every time, well, not every time, 30% of the time that you crit. So if you're critting pretty consistently, then it makes sense to have this mod on, because those slash procs are going to deal a lot of damage. So let's go ahead and test out this build versus this guy. So keep in mind, what we want to be doing is we want to be hitting headshots as consistently as we can, because that's going to give us a massive increase to our damage. And yeah, so just watch how fast this guy dies. He'll die in about 5 or 4 shots, okay? So in plan, we hit them in the head. Let's just let him get up. And then there's 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, 4 shot, and then those slash procs will finish him off, and he's gone. Keep in mind, this guy was level 150, so that's pretty insane. So you have a combination of your corrosive procs eating away at the enemy's armor, so they're just taking more damage per shot every single time because his armor is being reduced, and then you also have those slash procs eating away at his health while you're shooting at him. So, the DPS of the shotgun is actually, like, very insane. Moving on, there's also a way that you can get even more out of this. So what you could do is you could throw on your dual stat elemental mod. So you could potentially just go ahead and throw on like corrosive dual stat elemental, and you could up your status chance that way. Or you can do what most people are doing with high crit weapons and run viral damage instead of the corrosive, because what that's going to do is that's going to reduce the enemy's maximum health through their armor. So their armor, it's a factor whenever it comes to how much damage you're dealing, like the numbers you're seeing. But because their maximum health is being reduced, then it doesn't really matter too much. So we run viral damage with our dual stat elemental mods, which are Frigid Blast and what's it called, Toxic Barge. And this puts our status chance up to 49.1%, which is, it's fair. We have a crit chance of 57.0. We have crit multiplier 5.9 again, so it's a very well-rounded build. It's hybrid, and on top of that, because we have that high crit or decent crit chance, then we're going to get those slash procs, or 30% chance to get those slash procs on crit. So it turns into a very insane weapon. So let's just go ahead and test this build out, and it more or less kills in the exact same amount of shots, but you'll notice that the enemy's health starts to go down a lot quicker type of thing, right? So let's just go ahead and do the exact same thing. So we're going to shoot him in nothing but the head. And you're just going to see this enemy's health completely deplete. So here you go. And you just see all those slash procs and viral procs eating away at him. So you can just keep on firing at him, and then they'll die super quick. So yeah, just keep in mind these guys are level 150, and we're not using anything, at least on this build, to deal extra damage to the enemy's armor, right? So, it's very hit or miss the amount of shots that it takes to kill them, because you're relying on status effects and stuff like that. But, once those status effects do kick in, then you're going to be dealing insane damage, and it's super worth it to sort of, like, run hunter munitions and stuff on this. So just make sure you're hitting consistent headshots and things like that, and they'll die very fast. So you're just kind of relying on those status procs. But, yeah, the shotgun is super insane, and you can make it even more insane whenever you take into consideration, like, the fact that you have frames like Haro, like Mirage, like Chroma, which can buff up your damage. It just turns into a very awesome weapon at that point. So, you can like build this almost any way you want. You can either run full crit, you can run full status, you can run this hunter munitions build, this hybrid that I have right here, and this weapon is going to be, really good. What I haven't shown you guys yet is the air burst. So the air burst is like kind of like a firework, and this is mainly status. So you're not really going to want to be using this as a means of killing the enemy because the damage is just too low. So let's go ahead and just demonstrate what I mean. So if you shoot it at him, it's just going to, like, jump off him type of thing. So it's going to deal very low damage, just impact damage, and it's not really going to do much. But if you let it travel a certain distance and then it explodes above his head, he's going to be knocked over, which, basically allows you to sort of lay into his head with your buckshot at that point, right? So, there you go. You just use this as like a means of crowd controlling your enemy, so it's got some nice utility to it as well, some built-in utility, which is pretty cool. And it's also how utility should be put into the game, not in the actual damage types itself. I have a video coming out about the whole damage changes later on this week as well, so if you guys want to stay tuned for that. But yeah, so this is the Corinth. I recommend picking it up as soon as you can. It's an awesome weapon, and I've absolutely fallen in love with it. And yeah, just get it. It's great. It's fun. It sounds great. It feels great. You can use it for some long-range shots in the plains of Eidolon. You can kill level 150 heavy gunners very easy with it, and there's no reason not to pick it up in my opinion. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and hit that like button below. If you want to see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.